In this video, Sophie absolutely sends it on me as we talk about the good points, and I absolutely send Sophie right back to the realm as we talk about the bad. Hello everyone, and welcome back to another video where on Sunday, sometimes we do these kind of videos where we actually talk about features of a given game, etc. Normally Gran Turismo, this one's Gran Turismo. It's all about Sophie, if you hadn't guessed already from the thumbnail and the title, because GT Sophy's just finished. Obviously, it was an experience you could play on the PlayStation 5 on Gran Turismo 7, and it allowed you to face Sophie, which has been a big development in Gran Turismo in terms of an AI racing, but an AI which is very capable of racing and very capable of beating world finalists. We've seen that already with some of the videos actually put out there by Gran Turismo and Sony and the like. So I recently finished it and I've been through it. Obviously, my first experience of Sophie was me ramming them off in the patch video and Sophie liking it in a weird way. It was kind of funny, really. But I've been through all the races now, tried them all, tried to do it as clean as possible, fair as possible, so I could get a real feel for Sophie. How hard is it? How well do they react and things like that. And that's what we're going to talk about in this video. It's going to be talking about it, looking at the positives and negatives and what can be improved, because one thing that the designers, the architects, the creators of Sophie said is they love to hear opinions. So on the off chance they watch this video, happy days. Hopefully I can give some of my opinions. Hopefully they're beneficial and hopefully we get a good GT Sophy in the future, because in reality it does need some improvements, but I do kind of like it, to be honest. I said it in the patch video. It's such a step up from the current AI in Gran Turismo, which is absolutely shocking. So first up, let's get into the good. So first up, and the very real experience that you can really have with GT Sophy is the sense of competition. Now, obviously, there's different difficulty levels there. You had beginner. Essentially, what it did is it adjusted the PP. So at beginner, you had such a PP advantage over the other drivers. Hey, PP. Woohoo! Anyway, back to seriousness just for a second, because it's a serious video a little bit. But then you went all the way up to 1 versus 1, and 1 versus 1 was identical cars. And oh my word, the sense of competition was real. It was solid. In fact, I'd argue actually it was too hard. And I did have a little bit of questions in terms of how can Sophie drive some of the cars the way it does, because we as players definitely can't. The big example of this was the Honda Integra at Tsukuba, because if you look at the drivers who beat Sophie in a really fair square competition, Sophie was still on their tails, but if you look side by side, and you can see that on the screen now, the players had to do the old hold the brake while accelerate technique for FF cars. Now, obviously, that is an exaggeration of weight transfer. They're just trying to get a bit more weight off the front wheels so the car can turn a little bit better while accelerating. That's a normal thing. Obviously, it's a bit more exaggerating in Gran Turismo due to the weight transfer, and obviously, we've recently had a physics update, so that has been reduced as well. But Sophie doesn't have to do that. Now, how can Sophie get that sort of good turning while we have to do some a bit extreme exploitation, I would say, you know, extreme driving style, let's put it that way, rather than exploitation, to get the same result? I'm not too sure. So I do have questions over the ability of what Sophie has in the background and able to do in terms of the physics that Sophie experiences versus the player. However, irrespective of that, that was some serious competition. I mean, I found it tense. I literally was defending for my life the entire time on all of the endurance races. All the 1 versus 1 races. I really was. It was solid work, and it's good. It's good it's like that. I'd argue it's a bit too strong. I mean, you know, at the end of the day, I was a world finalist. I'm not entirely washed yet. Yes, Shelty, I'm not entirely washed yet. I'm getting towards that area, but even so, you know, I'm still in that 0.1, 0.5% or whatever of players, and I'm struggling. So other players will struggle as well. So there definitely needs to be some difficulty level there, but hey, the 1 versus 1 did truly show what Sophie can do, and some of the racing there is unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. I mean, I enjoyed it. The reactions to Sophie could see when I defended, and Sophie reacted to my different lines, etc. It was good. It was really good. So, you know, the first major point, a really good point, was that it generated competition where we've never had that before with Gran Turismo AI. Next up, and we briefly touched on it just then, was all about the fact that Sophie actually reacts. Now, if you look at the normal Gran Turismo AI, you go into a corner, they don't really react. They just stick to their line and then carry on with what they're doing. Sophie? Oh yeah, Sophie reacts. Sophie reacts really well. You know, if you send it down the inside, Sophie will react. It is so good, because that way they're obviously Sophy sees you go down the inside, has to pull out of it. You go through. Sophy, if you leave the door open, yeah, I can actually go for it as well, but we'll get onto that a little bit later on. I did see that a few times as well. And, you know, moving from the slipstream, as I did with on Trail Mountain, as just in the background as well. You know, Sophy is reacting to my lines. It's not a case of just being static on that racing line. Sophy is moving. I think that is really good, really good. That's what you want. You want to feel like you're racing somebody else, or you have that competition where you're having to actually change line or actually compete at your level to be able to race and actually win. You know, have that challenge. I think that's good. There should always be a challenge. We know the Gran Turismo AI at the moment isn't a challenge. Sophy's a challenge. And that's the good part of it, because Sophy can actually react to whatever you do. Finally, in terms of the good points then, before we go into the more bad points and constructive criticism, I would say, are the emotions. The emotes that you see as you race Sophy. Now, I think this is awesome that there is definitely some form of reaction there in terms of you can see those faces change. I think it's really, really, really good. As you see in the background, when I absolutely punt that BMW to Narnia, all the AI like it. They're like, ha ha, in your face, BMW. Yeah, you've gone to Narnia. You've gone to the realm. And as we saw when I also hit Sophy in that video as well, in my patch video, you know, Sophy liked it. Sophy loved it. A bit rough there. All right, what bang, straight in. Loved it. Carried on with the race. It was all good fun. So I do like the idea of the emotes, the emotions that potentially could exist with Sophy. And I say potentially because we're now going to go into the bad and also some of the improvements that I'd love to see to Sophy that would really bring Sophy to life. So the first bad point I want to talk about, and I'm sure many of you have experienced this. I know when everyone told me to try this out, I did. Was that GT Sophy can sometimes just absolutely send it in such lethal ways it spins you out. Oh, I had some experiences, especially at Alsace. Oh my word, did Sophy like to send it there with the drift sends and all sorts. I mean, you've seen that, some of that in the background as well. But yeah, some of them seemed a bit too extreme, and obviously absolute sends that crash you out are something that players don't like to experience online. I'm not sure they really like to experience it offline either. While the Sophy AI should be good and challenging the player, some of the sends, they're just so extreme. It's like, whoa! And even around the outside, you know, sometimes Sophy may turn in thinking they can absolutely send it around the outside and survive, and then really doesn't. It just causes a bit of a crash and a bit of a collision. It's just like, oh, why did you do that? Because you wouldn't really do that in real life. So, you know, it's pretty bad in that respect because the sends were so extreme, especially obviously as you got to the more difficult levels, or technically the more difficult players, should I say, rather than levels, because obviously of the PP advantage. It was just a bit too extreme, some of those sends. It really was. So that obviously is a bit of a bad point at the moment. Obviously, it's hopefully something that Sophy can be taught to change. Obviously, we saw those driving standards change over the videos, you know, from the first one where they were absolutely abusing track limits. That was reduced a little bit and things like that. I'd like to see some of those sends slightly reduced because they're a little bit too extreme, and it is a bit of a bad point on GT Sophy. The next bad thing, and I argue the last bad thing as well, there's not too much wrong with GT Sophy other than it being amazing, but this one frustrates me a little bit, is the constant update of the emotes. I like the idea of them. By all means, I love the idea of them, but the change from happy face to sad face to worried face to happy face to shocked face, all in the space of 1 nanosecond, and these constant things of updates. Oh, it is so too much. That totally needs reducing. Like, in real life, as a human being, obviously, as I raced it on a video game, like literally, as I race, I don't go from happy to sad in the space of a nanosecond to angry to shocked to happy to sad. Again, going through that cycle very quickly. That doesn't happen. So, yeah, it just needs to be more human-like, you know. So if they are sad, they go, you know, they're sad, but they're sad for like 10, 15, 20 seconds, then they recover from it, and then they maybe have a different emote then that appears after that. Not this constant changing. Bam, 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 bam. Fire. Change. Bing, 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 bing. Nah, that's just a bit too much. I mean, you're seeing some of that in the background. It just changes every little bit of second, and it's just a little bit too much at the moment. It really is. I'd say I love the idea of it, and we'll get some improvements about improving that in a second. But yeah, just a little bit too much of them updating all at the same time, all at once, with too many bings going on in the background. Let's talk about the good and the bad, and I want to focus on one specific area that I'd love to see improved, and I think it would substantially improve GT Sophy just that much more. And that is the emotes, the emotions you see as you drive, where Sophy is changing from shocked to angry and all that good stuff that I've basically just moaned about in the previous segment. And what I actually would love to see is the driving style of Sophy change to those emotions. So if you think back to some of the old school games, I think it was TOCA World Driver or World Race Driver. I can't even remember the game. It was like TOCA 3 or something like that. They brought in something like that with like a rival. You had a rival and they would drive a bit more aggressive against you. You know, if you tap them, they may tap you back then at that point. I think something like that would be kind of nice with Sophy. Now, I did talk about lunges and being too extreme, but what I'm saying here is, let's just say they're worried that they're catching or they're being caught by yourself. What I'd like to see is a few mistakes maybe coming from Sophy, you know? Maybe they just clip the grass slightly because they're worried you're catching them so quick. Maybe you do tap them and therefore they drive a bit more aggressive around you while the other Sophys don't drive that aggressive. Something like that. Really showing motion with the driving style. I think that would bring so much to it. So at the moment, we've got these emotes there showing, you know, angry, sad, happy, whatever it might be. What would be really amazing is that they had a really good reaction to the driving style. You know, they did that driving style reaction to that. When you drive angry, sometimes you've seen angry Tidge. Angry Tidge sometimes is the fastest Tidge you can be. But sometimes if you're super duper angry, you can make a lot of mistakes. You know, bringing that into it, I think that would be awesome for GT Sophy as an improvement. And that would bring some meaning to those emotions, you know, where you see Sophy shocked, where you see Sophy worried, you see those driving styles change. That would be absolutely awesome and something I'd really like to see. Do you know what just came to mind randomly out of the blue? GTA or Grand Theft Auto, where they suddenly go, you hit a car sometimes and it just goes off crashing into everything. You know, not extreme, of course, I don't want that, but that idea that there's a reaction to your action. I think, I would love that. I think that was one of the biggest improvements that can happen to GT Sophy. That would absolutely just take it from like being awesome now to absolutely just on another planet. Another planet. Something like that would be absolutely awesome to see. And also not being just the yellow emote. So if it's angry, it's a proper red angry face. So you can see they're angry. You know, something like that would be awesome. Maybe having the rivals in there. That would be good. You know, having little rival AIs, you know, you go through that system, you race Sophy Blue, who's now bought a Honda Civic. You're in a Honda Civic as well. I don't know. I'm just picking cars out of the blue here. The same car, apparently. You're racing your rivals. Then later on in the game, you're both in Honda NSX's Group 3, and now you're racing each other again. They're rivals. You're like, oh, I'm going to beat you this time. I'm going to beat you. Be kind of cool. Be kind of cool just to have that. It's that feeling of being involved in the game, you know, having those reactions. Because I think that would literally make Sophy complete, in my opinion. Because we're pretty much there with the difficulty. You've seen some of that, as I've shown in the background. But that would really, really help. So finally, my overall opinion then on GT Sophy. I think this is going to revolutionize Gran Turismo. It's a big thing to say, a big statement to say, but Gran Turismo AI has always been shockingly bad. We're all aware of this, you know. There's no real competition there. You know, you just race, it sticks to its line, you do your thing, there's nothing there. You know, it's basically it's just a mute race, essentially. You're just driving around. And I've said it before, I don't like grinding races for money because of that thing. I have no challenge there. If I had a challenge, it'd be kind of fun, you know, to do those. It'd be frustrating at times because I'm trying to earn money, but, you know, it'd be kind of nice because I would play the game and I would enjoy it because I've got a challenge there. Everyone loves a good challenge. So I think Sophy is going to bring that challenge. Really revolutionize Gran Turismo. And when do I expect to see this? When do I expect to see this? Most people, I've said this on live streams as well, most people are probably thinking, oh, GT7 will have it. I don't think so. I don't think Gran Turismo 7 is going to have it. I think Gran Turismo 8 is going to be the Gran Turismo that we've wanted in such a long time. Why do I say this? I think GT8 is going to be the GT4. You know, GT4 is the GOAT, or probably, is it the GOAT? One of the best Gran Turismo games, especially offline wise. GT4 was the GOAT. It was an awesome game. GT8 is going to be the GT4. It's going to be the complete game, in my opinion. Sophy will feature in there. We're going to have an absolutely revolutionized offline mode, I imagine. And then that's just going to bring a lot of players to the game. And that potentially will help online. I'm an online player, substantially. You all know that. I've done the esports, I've done everything. And I think the more players that come to Gran Turismo, the more players that play it, the better the game will become, the better the game will be, and the better racing every single person will have in the game. And that's what I want. And I do believe Sophy is revolutionary for Gran Turismo, for racing in general, and for the future of the whole genre, in my opinion. So expect to see this in GT8. I 100% believe it will be in GT8. I believe the Peppers, and it was potentially possible for GT7, but they're waiting for GT8 with the development. That's going to be it for this video. I do hope you've enjoyed it. It's a bit of a different video to normal, as always. If you did like it, give it a like. Subscribe to the channel to stay in touch with all the latest content. And just think, we could have a GT Sophy Tidge at some point in the future. How cool would that be? So make sure you subscribe for that. 2 videos there to check out. Thank you once again for watching, and I hope to see you in another video or live stream again very soon.